Welcome to Szabo Cast. Here we discuss all things from a working class, trans, anarchist, analytical perspective. Due to the nature of this show, listener discretion is advised. My name is Skylar, my pronouns are she, they, they, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us today.
There is plenty to say, but it's really difficult to put the words together. I will do my absolute best. An active duty soldier of the U.S. Air Force by the name of Aaron Bushnell committed what is described as the most extreme form of protest, being self-immolation or setting yourself on fire. This took place on Sunday of February 25th. This took place in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. While this is an audio podcast and I won't be showing you any graphic footage, I'd like for you to listen to Aaron Bushnell's final words. These are the final words that he said before he ended his life.
I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal.
I'm going to briefly pause. I want to talk about what we just heard. If you haven't already seen the video for yourself, this entire part of the video that I am referring to is so eerily calm because you know what's coming. And I'm not the first person to bring up Aaron Bushnell's calmness. This was also mentioned on CNN as well.
We are not going to show that video. It is extremely graphic and disturbing. I have watched the video. I can tell you at the beginning, at the start of it, you can see Bushnell walking up to the embassy on the street in his military fatigues. He's speaking calmly to the camera.
But if you notice in that earlier clip with Aaron Bushnell where he said his final words, it's not even just his tone that's calm. It's the surrounding area that is completely silent, almost so deafening in fact, and it's in front of the Israeli U.S. Embassy in the capital. At the risk of perverting the whole thing, this is almost a work of art in a way, because it's so silent that it's kind of deafening. Think about it. Israel has, for not even just the past couple of months, but for generations, completely decimated the Palestinian population, rendering the diaspora so fucking far spread, complete with ethnic displacement, bombing campaigns, cutting off their water supply, cutting off their power supply, cutting off medical and food aid that's even coming to the border, with even far-right Zionist protesters showing up at the border, blocking trucks with food and humanitarian aid to people and children who could use that to survive. A copious amount of content on TikTok specifically created by IDF soldiers celebrating the massive destruction and bloodshed of Palestinian civilians. I literally could go on forever because ultimately I'm not even scratching the surface and I'm not even sure if I really want to. Not to mention I've already done 2 other podcasts about this topic alone of Israel and Palestine. But it feels so uncanny that I myself used to be this edgy fucking teenager who used to think of the most edgy fucking things I could muster, and the fucking Israeli government invents new ways to enact some of the most unspeakable evil that is humanly possible, so unfathomably evil, especially within the ideology of Zionism, all the way down to their genocidal actions and bloodshed. Yet right in front of the Israeli embassy and the state capital, it is quiet, almost weirdly and undeservingly peaceful. Do you understand what I mean? It's like there's something messed up about that. Not the peacefulness of it all, but the contradiction between there being peace here while there is hell over there. And our government specifically has a whole hand involved in the hell that is going on over in the Middle East. And I think that this goes hand in hand, especially with the sentiment that Aaron Bushnell expressed with, quote, "This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal." And it's almost like a punishment in a way when Aaron Bushnell, an active soldier, goes and does his protest in such a fucking dramatic fashion.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Man's on fire! Man's on fire!
And I want to ask some of my audience, like, what kinds of emotions do you feel when you hear that? When you listen to this? When you listen to him burning? When you listen to him declare for a free Palestine? Because that's what this boils down to at the end of the day. No matter what you think of Aaron Bushnell, no matter what you think of the United States or how patriotic you are, what it boils down to is that Palestine needs to be free. That there needs to be a ceasefire, goddammit. Personally, I have seen the unedited and uncensored version of this footage over and over and over again. Watching it for myself, it almost looks like it's from a movie, like it's CGI. And I'm not speculating that it is CGI, I'm not saying that at all. I do believe it to be a real piece of footage. But I am saying that because how often do you really see somebody light themselves on fire? And you have to really think about this. The piece that I mentioned earlier within the atmosphere leading up to Aaron Bushnell self-immolating like that, he has, with a message, effectively disturbed the peace. But it is also interesting too, right? Because there really wasn't any peace to begin with. There was only silence. The deep, somber moment of silence that was right in front of the Israeli embassy on the Capitol that took place moments before this act of protest occurred. And in a way, it speaks volume, plenty of volume in fact, because now it is forcing the media and all of the people who witness this event, whether it be in person or through the media or through hearsay, to engage in the message that he left behind. Free Palestine. I will not be complicit in genocide. This is what the ruling class has decided will be normal. I want to briefly put a pin on that because there's another point I want to address before I continue with this one. Some people may say, well, Aaron Bushnell is absolutely psychotic for doing this act of protest. He took his own life. What kind of silly person would take their own life in the name of protest? But I think people are forgetting to recognize why he did what he did. Of course, I would never condone or endorse anybody to do this act of protest, and for those who are listening at home, do not do it. I am legally obligated to tell you to not do this at home, no matter what. But it doesn't mean that I am in any position here to shame Aaron Bushnell for his actions. He took his own life, and that was his decision. And that was, more importantly, the best way to get your fucking government to listen to you. Because it seems like our government doesn't fucking listen to its own people. Let alone the voters. Let alone the peaceful protests. Let alone the people who are demanding a fucking ceasefire. There is absolutely no way whatsoever to justify the United States' involvement in giving funding and validation to Netanyahu and his exterminationist policies and plan to not only kill off the Palestinian people of Gaza and the West Bank, but also to expand Israel's borders in future potential colonial exterminationist projects that involve more Arabic lives being taken. I am not a nationalist by any stretch of the imagination, and I pledge no allegiance to any nation-state whatsoever. But in the name of the fucking planet Earth, I do not support this. And while I would not light myself on fire over my beliefs, I can understand and sympathize with somebody who does. Think about it, it's not even just the ending of a life, but it's bringing that kind of trauma and violence at home, in our borders. When people in other countries from far away die at the hand of US imperialism or US puppet state bullshit, there's almost a disconnect in a way, because we don't spend our day-to-day lives with those children or those women or those men or those people who are living their day-to-day life. No, we live our day-to-day life here in the mainland, in the USA, on the Western Hemisphere. It's easier for us to relate to our own friends and family suffering because those are some of the main characters of our own lives. But it's that sense of humanization that we have with our day-to-day lives, that relatability that gives other humans value on a day-to-day basis. And in order for you to kind of be suckered into jingoistic nationalist propaganda, the nation state has to functionally rob you of that humanizing ability to relate to one another, to another human being. And it makes the nation state a lot more capable of creating a scapegoat, being the other, the us versus them mentality. And this tactic has been repeated throughout history. We are the United States, they are the terrorists of Iraq. We are Israel, those are the terrorists of Palestine. And the lie can shift multiple times over. We found weapons of mass destruction in a cave in the Middle East. They have an underground bunker in the bottom of the Al-Shifa hospital that is a Hamas control center. These are lies created by the nation state as a means to masquerade itself as some kind of legitimacy for bombing children. It is repetitive, exterminationist logical fallacies, because they think you're dumb enough to use whatever reasoning that they have after they change the story over and over and over again in order to strip you of the ability to question why are they killing children in the thousands. I find that to not only be disturbing, but more importantly, cowardly, because they hide behind the media in order to make those reasonings. They hide behind the corporate media in order to make those reasonings. And of course, with Israel specifically, I mean, they've got not only the state media, but they've got their own fucking politicians that are making these arguments of genocide. So what Aaron Bushnell essentially did was bring that fucking contradiction home within our borders, into the capital, Washington, D.C., specifically in front of an Israeli embassy. Yes, he speaks so calmly, but his words are loud as fuck. He is here to create a disturbance, because there is no peace here, ultimately. There is only silence, and the silence is so deafening that somebody needs to fucking snap us all out of our slumber. I will not be complicit in genocide, he says. That's what this is about. It is not about mental illness. It is not about emotional distress. It is about Palestine and why it should be free. Because now the United States has to answer to people dying within their own borders, especially in regards to the genocide that the United States is endorsing. I could be wrong, but the last figure that I read was $14.5 billion sent to Israel. Billions with a B, by the way, because we're talking about a measly 100 million for Palestine in humanitarian aid. The said humanitarian aid that Zionist protesters are blocking right now. Where I'm getting at here is that it is sad that Aaron Bushnell passed away. It is absolutely heartbreaking. The video footage is traumatizing. But the reason why it is so impactful is that that kind of violence that we saw in that footage is exactly the kind of violence that is going on in Palestine to children every fucking day. The Hamas attack on October 7, 2023 didn't just happen in a vacuum for no reason. Israel has led a non-reciprocal exterminationist project since the 1940s, for crying out loud. Specifically with the Nakba, which took place in the late 40s, and how it has always been within the interest of the Zionist movement to exterminate Palestine and the broader areas that surround it. So, with you listening at home, would it shock you to learn that according to the New York Times, the IDF knew about the Hamas attack on October 7th a year in advance, meaning that they've had ample time to respond to this attack. This means that hostages have actually gone missing because of the neglect of the IDF. And this extreme amount of extermination as violence that we're seeing in Gaza and the West Bank right now is due to Benjamin Netanyahu's strongman image being delegitimized by this failure of the state. In the future, I want to do a piece that has to do with the value of human life, and I'm going to be bringing up Aaron Bushnell again in that bit whenever I do so, as I definitely want to touch more upon this issue now, but I wanted to bring this up now because of the emotional impact that it has given me watching the footage over and over again, but more importantly, just I really want people to understand that what he did was to get people to pay the fuck attention to what's going on over there. And I know that some people are going to look at Aaron Bushnell as a member of the Air Force in the United States as some kind of inherent value because he's a troop and that he gave his life for a noble cause, and that it is absolutely tragic that our soldiers are dying because of this. But I wouldn't want to pervert it that way, folks. And there is a reason why I'm mentioning all of this, and that is because Aaron Bushnell is not the first person to self-immolate in the name of freeing Palestine. No, he's not even the first to self-immolate since October 7, 2023. No. December 1st, 2023 saw a self-immolation happening in Atlanta, Georgia. This time it took place outside of the Israeli consulate, and while we did identify there being a Palestinian flag attached to this person, there was no name, gender, or identity released at all when it comes to this individual, so we can only really assume what their intentions were, and it gives the media ample opportunity to completely pervert the message. Aaron Bushnell doesn't allow for that, even though the media absolutely tried to pervert the message by making it about mental illness. We do have the benefit of him recording and live streaming the event in which took place. We have the benefit of his own words and what he stood for, what he believed, where he saw the injustice, and what his hopes and dreams and aspirations were. Aaron Bushnell was 25, and I'm 32. Wow, it really hits me pretty hard. Somebody who is 7 years younger than I am did that, and that blows my mind. And although the loss of his life is absolutely tragic by every measure imaginable, at the same time, there's a lot that we can learn from here. For one, not everyone, especially enrolled army men, are complicit or satisfied with our government. I mean, it's absolutely important to recognize all of this because there's a sense of unity knowing that there are people who live in complete distress with the people who rule over us every day. Although the grim reality of it all is that sometimes those people who are not satisfied or are under distress with our government are sometimes the ones who die the soonest. But you gotta think about it like this. Aaron Bushnell's death was consensual. It was on his term. Again, not to endorse it to anybody who is at home. I don't want anybody to do that. But he used his own autonomy to make this decision. He's his own person. He's lived his own life. He made this choice for himself. Now take that and imagine the people in Palestine, where 14.5 billion of our taxpayer dollars goes to their extermination. It goes to their ethnic displacement. The money that we pay our fucking taxes for goes to some of the most crazy, batshit insane politicians in the world right now. There is no salvaging that. There's no vote blue no matter whoism that's gonna save that. And there are people here at home in the Imperial Corps who will go and live their day-to-day lives like it's nothing. Like they've never had to fight for their basic supplies like water, shelter, being able to fucking sleep at night without getting blown up. Really, think about it. Think about 9/11. Remember how traumatizing that was for everyone? Everyone? I was 11 years old when that shit happened. That shit was terrifying. 9/11 happened in New York, but I was living in the LA area. I thought LA was next or something. Being in constant fear of potentially fucking dying, it's not fun. But think about that actually being the reality, where your neighborhood, your community, your friends, the people that you love so dearly, the people that you're familiar with on a day-to-day basis, actually go fucking missing. Actually end up in the obituary, actually end up in landfills of dead bodies. That's what I mean, folks. That's why what Aaron Bushnell did, although I can't condone it or endorse it, I can understand why he did it. I understand the choice that he made, and I don't shame him for it, and I don't blame him for it. I don't have any criticism of what he did. No, he made that choice on his own accord, as an act of defiance against the state. And I do respect him on those terms. But there's something else to remember as well in light of all of this, and that is our mortality. We are alive. You're listening to this, you're basically alive, I assume, I think. I hope that there's no weird genetically altering kind of technology that makes dead people able to listen to podcasts. But where Aaron has sacrificed his life, we're alive, where we can make real, tangible, systemic change. Where Aaron's act of protest ended in his own demise, our act in protest can be sustainable. Where Aaron's act of protest was individualistic, isolated, and debatably adventurous in a way, we can act collectively, together, to be able to stand as a community repeatedly against the state. And of course, I want to make it very clear that this is not meant to minimize or to poke fun at what Aaron did, but this is more to say that Aaron died for a reason. I want to talk about One Piece for a second. I'm sorry, folks, this is important. In Season 2 of One Piece on Drum Island, there's an evil ruler by the name of King Wapol, and Wapol has unjustifiably forced all of the doctors in his kingdom to exclusively work for him and him only. This means the citizens of Drum Kingdom can't get health care. Essentially, they are deprived of the service of health care. But Dr. Harrowlook, who has some very suspicious practices of his own, takes on the burden of the task of curing what he described as the country's sickness of the heart. It is one day announced that Wapol's doctors are sick and are in a dire emergency. And Dr. Harrowlook rushes to the castle only to find that everybody is just fine, and that he essentially set Dr. Harrowlook up for a trap. Wapol has his men loading their firearms, all pointed at Dr. Harrowlook, but Dr. Harrowlook essentially has one trick up his sleeves. I want to play a clip from that scene so you get an idea of what I'm talking about.
So that was it. God. And none of them are sick. I was afraid this was a national crisis. But no. Luckily, it was just a trick.
Ha! If it really was a national crisis, I wouldn't want someone like you. Ignore his babbling! Execute him!
Save your bullets. You don't have what it takes to kill someone like me.
Huh?
Hey. When do you think a person dies? When a bullet from a pistol pierces his heart? No. When he's attacked by an incurable disease? No. When he eats a soup of deadly poisonous mushrooms? No! A man dies when people forget him. Even if I should disappear right now, my dream will come true. And when it does, the citizen's sickness of the heart will be cured as well. You're crying. Why, Dalton?
Is that true for a country?
Yeah, if the will to do it is passed on.
Come on, Dalton! Why are you crying?
Very shortly, a monster will be coming. He's my son. Please, don't hurt him. Don't worry, Chopper. Your mushroom won't kill me.
I've had his life!
Goodbye, Quack.
Thank you, Chopper!
Although in this instance, we're not looking at self-immolation, but rather instead, we are looking at a self-exploding doctor. And there are quite a few things that I thought were so important with that. Firstly, his concern with the doctors being alright. That was his main concern. Even to the point of tearing up, it's exactly the kind of person that Dr. Harrowlook truly was. A man of a heart of gold in spite of his flaws. And what I think is most important and relates to everything we talked about is the will to pass on. Of course, in the story of One Piece, he died because he didn't want to die to a poisonous mushroom that he accidentally ate. But you can't say that without everything else that he said that was not an act of protest. That was not an act of suicide purely based on mental illness. No, this is an act of suicide as a protest move. We can recognize it as extreme, as something that we ourselves would never do, but also at the same time recognize the whole point of what he did. It's grim, it's sad, especially with Chopper, his son that he aforementioned earlier, experienced a plethora of heartbreak and anger and sadness. Because to Tony Chopper, Dr. Harrowlook was the first person that he was able to safely open up to. Dr. Harrowlook was a person to him, a person in his life. But think about that. Aaron Bushnell is also a person in other people's lives. He mattered to people. He mattered to his family, to his friends. And you know what? The children dying in Palestine right now. Right fucking now. Those children should have futures ahead of them. But they don't. Because our taxpayer dollars goes to their extermination. What Aaron Bushnell did was take the unholy act of extermination to home to give us a taste as to what that looks like. For us to get the most rude awakening possible. That this is not okay, that this is not acceptable, that this is not the way we want to live our lives, in complete fear of dying all the damn time. And it shouldn't happen within our borders or otherwise. It shouldn't happen anywhere. It shouldn't happen on our terms. It shouldn't happen at all. Okay, like the Nakba should have never happened. The Holocaust should have never happened. The Wounded Knee Massacre, the My Lai Massacre, Abu Ghraib, for fuck's sake, should have never fucking happened. The point of the Holocaust is for us to learn that that kind of atrocity should never fucking happen again. It did not mean that a fucking Zionist fucking utopia in the name of exterminationism is the goal for the future. Hell no. It means that life is too fucking precious for us to stand by and let the most fucking batshit insane people who are our fucking world leaders right now legalize slaughter in the name of some nationalistic dribble. And this is where I'm gonna wrap up the podcast by saying that let Aaron Bushnell's actions radicalize you. Let it make you curious to learn more. Let it make you active in your community. Let it make you organize. Let it make you stay connected with your friends, your family, your comrades, your acquaintances, the people that you love in your life. Let it remind you to cherish life. Let it remind you that people deserve to live their lives, happy lives, fulfilling lives, successful lives, future lives. Let Aaron Bushnell's sacrifice make you cherish your favorite memories as you were growing up, as you are still growing up, and into the future. But also, let it remind you that other people who are currently in the most vulnerable positions in our world right now, they deserve that too. They deserve happy, free lives. Let it make you want to learn more about our world's histories. Let it make you interested in learning about the conquered in the conqueror's narrative. Let it make you angry at what's going on in society. Let it make you understand in a compassionate sense that things don't need to be this way, that there needs to be a future that is worth sustaining. Don't let Aaron Bushnell's act of protest drive you to hate, but instead use the lessons that we explore today to drive you further into a compassionate human being, as that's what you should be teaching others as well, to have compassion for your fellow human being. And I hope that I'm making my point extremely clear by saying this, because I really don't want any misconstrued messages about what I'm saying or me being put out of context or anything like that. I'm kind of sick of that at this point. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to rate, comment, subscribe.